According to The Economist, the average 25-year-old Gen Z earns a household income exceeding $40,000, over 50% higher than baby boomers at the same age. Yet 65% of Gen Z live paycheck to paycheck, with nearly half working 3 or more jobs just to survive. Raising the question, if Gen Z is doing so well on paper, why are they struggling to afford even the most basic necessities? While each generation has faced unique economic hardships, the underlying realities often point to deeper systemic changes, most notably reflected in younger generations' increasing inability to achieve home ownership, long regarded as a cornerstone of economic stability and national identity. Following World War II, the silent generation entered adulthood during an era of unprecedented economic growth and career opportunity, often referred to as the golden age of capitalism. Benefiting from FDR's New Deal policies and the GI Bill, the nation transitioned from a renting culture, where 60% of households rented their homes prior to the war, into one defined by home ownership. As demand for domestic manufacturing surged to meet consumer needs, American workers avoided competition from foreign labor as much of the world was still recovering from the war's devastations. Pro-labor legislation like the Wagner Act of 1935 strengthened union power, with over 30% of the workforce unionized by the 1950s, directly contributing to their ability to purchase homes in an expanding post-war economy. Throughout the 1950s, a minimum wage worker could cover a month's rent with less than a week and a half of full-time work, and by 1956, the federal minimum wage reached $1 per hour, equivalent to $11.77 today, enough to support a 2-person household above the poverty line. And by 1960, the median home price was roughly $11,900, or approximately $128,000 today, while the median household income stood at $5,600, or around $60,000 today. It yielded a price-to-income ratio of just 2.1, allowing 60% of Americans to own homes by 1960, integrating blue and white-collar workers into suburban developments, where this unprecedented level of accessibility enabled the silent generation to accumulate the largest share of real estate wealth of any generation in U.S. history, creating a standard of economic stability that later generations would increasingly struggle to reach. And by the 1970s, the baby boomers entered adulthood during a period of growing economic instability, particularly in industrial jobs, where a 1970s Time magazine article described younger workers as feisty, ebullient, and unwilling to put up with things as they are, as many younger workers felt union leaders were out of touch with the realities of the changing workforce. And despite record wage increases, like the iron workers' 30% raise in 1973, money alone failed to address grievances over working conditions and job meaning. And as one union leader lamented, the younger generation is not satisfied. I don't understand what they really want, what it would take to satisfy them. And unlike how this union leader was actually able to articulate his concerns, today these actions would label Gen Z as both lazy and entitled. As unions weakened, corporations increasingly turned to outsourcing production to countries with cheaper labor and fewer regulations, accelerating the decline of the American industrial base and leaving workers with fewer stable, high-paying jobs. Economic pressures like the collapse of the Bretton Woods in 1971 and the oil crisis of the 1970s fueled stagflation, eroding purchasing power and deepening instability. And by 1980, the median home price rose to $47,200, or approximately $191,000 today. And with a median household income of $21,000, or roughly $85,000 today, it yielded a price-to-income ratio of around 2.25. However, mortgage rates also peaked at a historic 18.63% by 1981, pricing out many prospective buyers and setting the foundation for transforming houses from necessities into financial assets. And as a result, young boomers began to live at home longer while simultaneously leaving the labor force, mirroring many of the characteristics faced today, particularly as Gen Z has 86% less purchasing power than baby boomers had in their 20s. As the economic landscape continued to shift, Generation X entered adulthood during the tech boom, which created opportunities in software and e-commerce, but also widen economic inequality. NAFTA in 1993 accelerated offshoring, contributing to the loss of 6 million US jobs by 2010. Soaring tuition costs, which doubled between 1980 and 2000, forced many Gen Xers into student debt, where by 1995, graduates averaged $11,500 or $24,000 today in student loans, limiting career mobility for those outside high-paying tech roles. Rising housing costs added further pressure, with the median home price in 2000 reaching $119,000, or roughly $224,000 today, and a price-to-income ratio of 2.85, resulting in lenders to aggressively market risky products like adjustable-rate mortgages and interest-only loans, making homeownership appear attainable while masking significant risks, setting the stage for the 2008 global financial crisis, where Gen X homeowners lost 30% of home equity, erasing much of their wealth, while also leaving millennials to enter adulthood during a severe economic crisis. By 2008, millennials were the most educated generation in history, with 70% pursuing higher education by 25. Yet rising tuition costs saddled the average graduate with $40,000 in student debt, limiting financial flexibility and forcing many into jobs unrelated to their degrees, where unemployment peaked at 10% in 2009, delaying career starts and postponing milestones like homeownership and wealth accumulation, especially as the median home price had climbed to $222,000 by 2010, or approximately $312,000 today, while the median household income stood at $50,000, or around $73,000 today, yielding a price-to-income ratio of 4.44, where the housing shortage over the last decade has only worsened this issue, as new construction between 2010 and 2020 fell far below historical levels when adjusted for population growth. And during this period, only 6.8 million single-family homes and 3.1 million apartments were actually built, where Freddie Mac estimates a current shortfall of 1.5 million homes, where the National Low-Income Housing Coalition reports a deficit of 7.3 million rental units for low-income households, where we can see that with each generation, systemic barriers of stagnant wages, rising education costs, and an inaccessible housing market has only grown larger. But unfortunately for Gen Z, these challenges were only expedited by the 2020 global crisis. Entering adulthood amid mass layoffs and inflation, Gen Z faces the compounded fallout of decades of economic instability. Between 1979 and 2024, wages have grown by just 29.4%, while productivity has surged by over 80%, leaving inflation-adjusted wages increasing by only 0.2% annually. Meanwhile, in-state tuition at public universities has soared from $394 in 1970 to $10,560 in 2020, burdening many Gen Z graduates with significant debt. But despite this, 39% of hiring managers report avoiding recent graduates, citing concerns over skills and preparedness, resulting in 35% of entry-level jobs to now require 3 to 5 years of experience, causing a cycle of underemployment that leaves Gen Z struggling to gain the necessary experience to advance, while debt further restricts their financial mobility, where housing just further compounds these challenges. By June 2023, nearly 1 in 10 US homes were valued at $1 million or more than double the share in 2019. With a median home price of $420,000 and a median household income of $80,000, the price-to-income ratio stands at 5.25. However, for Gen Z workers earning a median income of $40,000, this ratio increases to 10.5, leaving Gen Z with the option of living at home longer or going into an apartment, where the average monthly rent now exceeds $1,700 a month. And for the cherry on top, institutional investors projected to own 7.6 million homes, or over 40% of single-family rentals by 2030, just further leaves Gen Z to navigate in an economy where financial stability feels increasingly unattainable. Bring me to my final point about perception. Why I believe it is so important when addressing a concern or a question like, why is Gen Z so poor, when breaking down history or breaking down the different generational components, is that the answers lie in the history. The answers lie in the very same difficulties that each generation has faced. Why is Gen Z so poor? The answer isn't that they're experiencing something unique or their difficulties aren't unique compared to any other generation or to anyone else. I think you could argue, which I believe I did in this video, that the magnitude of their difficulties is unique. I think that you could say it is more challenging, it is more difficult. I believe the social safety net is completely gone now. But the reality is that the same difficulties, the same concerns are affordable housing, affordable education, that your dollar cannot buy anything, wage increases, some sort of national unity. These are the same things that we've been fighting for the last 100 years. So the question really is why is nothing ever changing? Now, of course, some things are changing, but in the reality, why are these same few components not changing? One of the reasons why I believe, and the things that I believe we could actually make a difference on, is the perception of generations, the perception of what it is that we're supposed to be doing. When we look at history, it is so long, there's so many different components. When we look at American history, okay, well, it brings it down just a bit. But in our minds, the way we operate in society, we think American history as maybe World War I past, but really World War II and after. We think of World War II and after as American history. And the reality is that we're comparing what each generation has had as this sliding scale away from one of the biggest investments into America as what happened during the New Deal, what happened during World War II, what happened in this super unique time period. And we're not realizing that what is happening just isn't sustainable. What's going to happen is in 10 years from now, there will be a video, why is Generation Alpha, I think is what they are, why is Generation Alpha so poor? Because we're continuing to kick the can down the road and we're not asking the right questions. We're not actually having discussions. We're not actually doing anything to fix the issue. One of the things that I get the most frustrated with is listening to older individuals, baby boomers and millennials and Gen Z, have this debate of who has it worse when in regards to housing. The high inflation, high interest rates, the total disaster that is our economy today. Because the reality is it's not, I'm saying this because I want to help, or I'm saying this because I want to inform. Largely, I'm saying this because I want the perception to be my life was harder. My life is harder. That I can justify my decisions. I can justify what my decisions were. That there wasn't maybe an alternative. Maybe there isn't an alternative, or there is one. The issue with perception, and I'm about to put myself at risk because I'm going to sound like a whining Gen Z. But I believe and I hope that I have built enough trust to be able to show the magnitude of what is happening. What happens being a generation dealing with perception, especially a young one, especially Gen Z. The reason that I made this video was I ran across a study that showed how much Gen Z believes they need to make a year to be financially well off. And I'm asking you that question. So, how much do you think Gen Z believes they need to make a year to be financially well off? $600,000 a year. Just give me a moment. So just hold what it is that you're saying or what you're thinking inside. Being someone that has worked in the banking industry, having older parents, the majority of my friends are older, I instantly thought what they lack, what Gen Z lacks, what my generation lacks is experience. They just don't know. I think, of course, there is some financial literacy in that. I think Americans as a whole lack financial literacy. But I think, so then let's dive a little bit more into that. The perception of what happens with the lack of experience. So we don't have We don't have elders. We don't have wisdom being passed down. We don't have experience being passed down. But why 600,000? Why so dramatic? I think one of the answers is social media. The perception of what life is like on social media is so not what real life is like. And I think that as a society, we say social media is at fault. I don't like to say what is at fault, but I actually think it is a small percentage in comparison to the important people in your life, typically your parents, your siblings, those people that form a core component around you. In my experience, I've already shared the issues that I've had with people, saying, how can you make these videos? You don't have a college degree. I run into that all of the time. But to dive a little bit deeper into it, it's almost been exactly a year since I had 10 blood clots in my lungs. Not the reason you're probably thinking. And I made a video about it and I was explaining it. And I was sharing what I was thinking during this period. And one of the comments I received was, I bet what you were thinking was, you should have moved out of your mom's basement. So what a nasty comment, right? And so I start to think, why wouldn't they just ask? I mean, I've been living on my own, completely self-sufficient, paying my own rent here in Austin for 2 years. But then I hear someone actually in my life. I just heard it, and this kind of also fuels this video, is that I'm living in a shack because my apartment is 600 square feet, 300 square feet, smaller than the average home in 1940. This is someone that is close in my life, right? So I hear that, coupled with, why can't he quit you? When will he quit YouTube and get a real job? But what gets better is that then I just interviewed someone that you could say is famous in the Austin area. I interviewed him, and now I am able to be talked about. We're now talking about my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel made it to the Christmas card. But nothing was ever said before. Not a word. Not a word. And so it goes to that perception. And so I think to myself, the 600,000, that extreme mark is, get away from me. I don't have a social safety net. I don't have elders speaking to me. Social media wants me to be this. My parents want me to be this. These people want me to be this. These people want me to be this. If I made such an exorbitant amount of money, I could push it all away and maybe I could figure out who I am. And maybe I am so off on this, but part of me believes that whenever I'm really struggling in my life, I think about the furthest thing. If I just had this, this could fix this. If I just had $600,000, maybe I could afford a home. Maybe I could afford healthcare. Maybe my parents would be proud of me. Maybe this, and this. Why I want to share some of these perspectives is that at the same time, I get, why are you wasting money on rent when you should buy a home? It's never enough. It is never enough for anybody. And the reality is that each generation is getting divided further from the previous one. And that's when I need to hear, or Gen Z needs to hear, what you're doing is enough. You're doing great. Maybe you should try it this way. Oh, I did this and that was a mistake. This happened, this happened. Showing what happened. That's what you can learn from history. The amount of clips that I watch throughout history to make these videos, unbelievable, an unbelievable amount. And what I see is we are repeating over and over and over and over again. But the lessons, the knowledge, the wisdom I am pulling from that to then pursue my life in a different trajectory is fundamentally changing my life. This past year has changed my life because of how much I have learned and how much I've realized a lot of the difficulties in my life actually don't really have to do with me. Now I get the opportunity to decide, how am I going to navigate these difficulties? And yes, I understand we're getting away from why is Gen Z so poor, but I believe all of this one, this is the answer for all of our concerns. And two, this is something that needs to be discussed. This is really why Gen Z is so poor. They are not only poor financially, they are poor in guidance. They are poor in support. They are poor in anyone to actually listen to what it is that they're saying. I personally have already said, I don't believe Gen Z is that great at communicating. I think largely that has to do with what happened in 2020. But if you listen to what they're actually trying to say, it's someone that needs help. Gen Z as a generation largely needs some guidance. We have to get out of here. What's so frustrating is to listen to someone that is older or whatever complain about how much groceries are or things. What do you think a Gen Z is feeling like? And take Gen Z out of it. What do you think a young person is feeling like? What do you think a young person trying to raise a family is feeling like? It is hard. We don't need to have it get escalated with unproductive conversations. And as soon as we can break free from that, we can begin to focus as a nation on the reasons why these difficulties keep happening over and over and over and over again. So anyway, I felt like I was complaining there, and I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like giving other people attention to anyway. But I think it needs to be said. So thank you all so much. As always, this video marks 100 videos and my 2-year anniversary for my first video on the same day. Very special moment. This will also come out when I will be in New York. So I actually might end up pulling an all-nighter to edit this because I will be flying out 7 in the morning. So the New York trip is what inspired me to start a channel. So it's a very special time right now, all while we're circling in on the 1 year since, I had that big health scare. So it's a very exciting time for me. I'm incredibly grateful. It's going to be good for me, I think, to just take a step back and kind of just decompress a bit. I've really been pushing it hard, and but it's to provide value, and that's a great feeling. And it feels so good to see the community that we're growing. It feels so unique. It feels like we really are doing something. And I just appreciate the time so much. I appreciate your time so much. And the comments that you guys share with me are just unbelievable. So anyway, thank you guys all so much. As always, have a wonderful day. Please let's try to be a little more kind. Let's just realize we just need to do our best. Let's improve on the financial literacy a little bit, but it's all going to be okay. Thank you all so much as always. Bye-bye.
There will come a day when I will make something of my life, and I will never have to set foot in this grease trap again.
Yeah, we'll see you after your lunch break, Squidward.
Okay.